just like honey, sweet to taste on burning lips. Wanna lie beneath the water, feeling icy fingertips. Soothing nectar to my body, wash the image from my eyes. Dirty streets of hungry people, drink the water, dry your eyes. Let's not look at the reflections, listen to the music made. Drinking water's ease the mind, thoughts of you begin to fade. Get yourself together before it's too late.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. Whoever's out there. I know Veg is out there. I know Joey's out there. And a few others. Wow. To start off, it's the 15th of April, which for me is kind of an important day in that I believe it's the 5th anniversary of Allan Holdsworth's untimely death. And it's interesting because, as you know, I have basically 3 intros before I come on. Essentially, the first one's there to give time for everybody to get in, and then the other 2, I kind of like both intros, and I kept it, which is kind of not unlike what, if you're all familiar with Al Stewart, he wrote a song called "Road to Moscow." It's about World War II, and he couldn't decide which intro to use. He had one with the guitar, another one where it was a guitar but it was arpeggiated. And then finally he just decided to put both of them in there, which is kind of what I've done. I couldn't tell which one to put on. It really doesn't matter. But it does give me time to, get prepared and everybody, sign on. I know not everybody gets in here at 9 o'clock, but, it is what it is. And I'm really glad to see everybody, all 5 of you. Well, 6 of you. So it's good to see you all. Really. Veg, I did see your video on scams, and I'll kind of relate that to what I talk about tonight. But some news to update everybody. Dave has called me basically 3 times in the last 3 days, which is great news. That's normal Dave. And he told me that he's feeling a lot better. He's not perfect, but he's doing a lot better. And you can hear it in his voice. I mean, he has that same sense of Dave humor. And he just sounds like himself. So he said that he's contemplating coming on next week on Divided We Stand. And then he'd be back. Now, we can't guarantee that, of course. And there is one stipulation that Dave gave me and gave all of you. And Dave said that he's willing to come on next week, but he would like $1.7 million deposited in his bank account. I wouldn't give him 2 cents. But anyway, that was Dave and his humor. So I don't know, but it looks like Dave should be back next week. And that will be one hell of a show, I would think. Yeah, it'll be great. There won't be a thing he could say that would upset me. Who knows? But it's really good because Dave told me something. I asked him, 1 to 10, how do you feel? And he said, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember every word that he said, but Dave said that compared to, what was, it's a 10 out of 10, but compared to what he wants it to be, he called 6. But I've seen, or I've heard, at least just from his voice, a complete change in him. And this all came about after his bypass. And again, I'm not a physician. I'm not going to evoke my opinion about it. But I will just say this. It is striking that his entire attitude has changed after that surgery. It's just Dave. Now, he couldn't come on the night. He's not quite ready yet, he said. But he's looking for next week. We'll see. All right, let's see who's in the house here. Gary's here. Yes, Veg, it is great news. And he asked for you guys because he does remember that show, the last show that he was on. He was asking for you, Veg, and you and for T-Bone. I hope to see T-Bone again. T-Bone, if you're out there, we miss you. And we miss everybody who isn't on, you know what I mean? It's like a little family here. My family of friends on Saturday night. Yeah. So that is good news. That is really, really good news. I'm sure you're all happy about that. However, tonight's show is not all that happy for us. In fact, it's one of these shows out of frustration that I have to delve into things that make me angry. And you all know that One of the things that had made me angry, most angry over the last 4 years, was the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where Judge Schrader, put his thumb on the scales of justice and essentially made it impossible for the jury to convict him, leaving Rittenhouse free to commit 2 murders. So, yeah. And of course, and I'm probably not going to get into the Supreme Court tonight, other than just to say that we know what's at stake with the abortion rulings, and no matter what happens in the court systems with Trump, looming out there are 3 justices who were appointed by him. So even if you get an indictment and a conviction, what happens in the appeal process? All right. So tonight, as the title states, something stinks in Texas. Now, you may or may not know the story of Daniel Perry. Daniel Perry was convicted of murder. There was a Black Lives Matter protest a couple of years ago, I believe. And I'll explain the situation in more detail. Long story short, for this moment, he shot somebody, killed him. He was convicted this past week. He has not been sentenced yet. But the governor of Texas, not unlike Bruce Schrader, is starting to put his thumbs on the scales of justice, and he's not even the judge, but he's ready to pardon this guy. And we'll go into this case a little more thoroughly so we can understand the full ramifications. But remember, no matter what I go through tonight, just know that Daniel Perry was convicted. This would be as if Rittenhouse had been convicted. And you can kind of see where this is going to lead, is that even if you get the convictions, in certain states it's not going to matter. In fact, it may not matter in any state at some point, especially when we were dealing with the Supreme Court. So we're going to look at what we know about what happened. I'm going to show you some screenshots from the internet, and then we're going to watch some videos, which is always kind of nice. Break things up. So let's go to the web, if we can here. All right. Let me center this. All right. So as I said, there was a Black Lives Matter protest. It was in 2020, so you'll forgive me if I'm not exact in my dates and when this happened. And you'll forgive me for reading this out loud, but I think it's important. And I'm only going to read this section here. On the night of July 25th, 2020, Perry, an active duty sergeant at nearby Fort Hood, was working as a rideshare driver to make extra money, his attorney, Clint Broden, previously said. He carried a handgun in his car for protection. Perry dropped a passenger off near the rally, which he did not know was taking place. Several people then began beating on Perry's car, and a man carrying an assault-style rifle approached the car and motioned with the rifle for Perry to lower his window, according to Broden. Foster, the individual with the assault rifle, began to raise the AK-47 towards Sergeant Perry. It was only then that Sergeant Perry, who carried a handgun in his car for his own protection, fired on Foster because he believed his life to be in jeopardy. The prosecution argued Perry initiated the encounter by running a red light to turn into the crowd gathered for the police brutality protest and had previously posted on social media about shooting protesters, according to CNN affiliate KEYE. So let's remember that, okay? He had previously posted on social media about shooting protesters. Then Austin Police Chief Brian Manley said officers responded to a 911 call in which the caller stated that they had just shot someone who approached their car window and pointed a rifle at them. One witness to the shooting, James Cesanowski, told CNN at the time that the driver of the car initiated the encounter by accelerating toward the protesters. Now, this sounds like Charleston. This was intentional. It was aggressive, and he accelerated into a crowd of protesters. He could have waited for us to pass, or he could have gone slow. He could have gone slowly. We would have allowed him to go through. All right, let's go back to the regular scene. So it's obvious that one of the protesters had an AK-47, which is not a good thing. And if somebody were pointing that at me, I might defend myself. In fact, I don't know what I'd do. I probably wouldn't even take the chance of defending myself because the guy has a high-powered rifle and he's got probably his finger on the trigger. But in this particular case, which went to trial, he was convicted. So the prosecutor convinced the jury essentially what Cesanowski was saying. That this guy purposely did it. And there's evidence. There's evidence that he had, prior to this, been saying things like that he would shoot. Okay? Let's look at some other things too. Yeah, Gary, you're right. And that is an important fact. In the age of open carry, you better not point a gun at anybody, especially if you're carrying an AK. And I agree with that. And if you feel threatened, you better shoot the other guy. Meaning the guy who had the AK. I don't know why he had it. But again, convicted. And already, Abbott, before they've even sentenced him yet. Okay, Abbott wants to give this guy a pardon. Now it has to go to a parole board for a pardon, but all of them were appointed by Abbott. Now, again, I'm going to show you some videos and whatnot, but I think there's some points that we can discuss, we can ventilate here. And that it's been far too frequent that people have been taking the law into their own hands. And the very fact that these people have these guns, either side, is very problematic to me. So you don't have to convince me that we need to do something about the guns. But the thing is, it seems as though this is the route for Republicans in general to take their, it's vigilantism. They're going to take the law into their own hands. And people like Kyle Rittenhouse get away with it. And then people like Daniel Perry will still get away with it. It reminds me of, I know I'm comparing apples and oranges, but it reminds me of Steve Bannon being convicted, but the judge giving him an out. So ipso facto, he's essentially free because the judge said, well, you can appeal and you can wait a while to appeal and blah, blah, blah. So the point is that even the conviction doesn't mean anything. And this is where it becomes such a political problem because they're going to just go against the rules, against law, and just do what they want. Because even if you get the conviction, it won't mean anything because these people get pardoned. And this is one of the reasons, obviously, that that Trump was doing all the pardoning. Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, what's his fuck name? Michael Flynn. These people didn't deserve to be pardoned. But now this seems to be the modus operandi of these politicians, Republican politicians. So from every corner, they're putting pressure on the system. It's almost as if they're chasing people out of the state. And he certainly, didn't like it because it was in Austin, the liberal city. Let's look at some videos regarding this, okay? It's not what I want. Not him yet. All right, so let's look at some body cam footage from Austin and whatnot. Hopefully this will be audible.
Yes, we watched that body cam footage. We also heard from a medical examiner who performed an autopsy on Garrett Foster.
I made a wrong turn. I've never had to shoot somebody before.
The 911 call Daniel Perry made moments after he shot Garrett Foster.
They were smashing my window. The guy pointed the weapon at me, and I panicked. I didn't know what to do.
For the first time,
So the sergeant panicked. You would think somebody, with that type of experience will learn not how to panic, to de-escalate. But he's saying, I panicked. So basically he's saying, to me, he's looking at, stand your ground laws and saying, okay, this is my way out here. I panicked. I felt threatened. So I'm going to shoot. Shoot first and think about it later. And that's the problem with the stand your ground law, because what it basically says is that if you feel threatened, you can fire away. That's a big problem, right? Somebody comes up to you and, he says, you are threatening me, and then he just blows you away. Now, it has to be reasonable. But a lot of loopholes.
body cam footage showcasing police's first encounter with Perry was shown.
He was visibly distraught. I remember his hands were shaking. In speaking with him, I could hear the quiver or nervousness in his voice.
Former APD officer Joshua V.
By the way, let's not forget this is a Fox News report.
C was one of the first officers to encounter Perry after the shooting.
It was obvious that he'd just been involved in a traumatic incident.
Just calm down. All right, just calm down, okay?
Perry told Officer VC protesters attacked his car when he claimed he accidentally turned into the crowd of protesters.
I found evidence, at least what I suspected is initial evidence, that there was some kind of attack on his vehicle. It looked like there were many handprints. There looked to be like boot or kick marks along the vehicle. And then I observed what I felt was, at the time, 2 bullet holes in the vehicle.
Perry told police he was more focused on the weapon than the face of the person he shot. He explained he rolled down his window because he thought the man was going to speak to him.
I didn't know where he was going to do the weapon, I saw it coming up.
Officer VC says he didn't know Foster personally, but he made the connection because police had been made aware of Foster and his rifle previously.
Did you believe that Garrett Foster was the primary aggressor?
Yes.
Dr. Jennifer Durkinson with the Travis County.
Okay, so again, this is a Fox News angle. Okay. And then, of course, we have Trump putting his 2 cents in.
To restore our Second Amendment, we will pass legislation protecting the absolute right to self-defense with federal penalties for prosecutorial abuse, like we saw just recently in Texas. You saw that, where a man was trying to defend himself and they want to put him in jail for the rest of his life. And I will ask Congress to send a bill to my desk.
See, he's already, he's become a prosecutor and judge at the same time. He's decided he knows. He's going to go well above the jury's decision, and he's going to make a call. Of course, that's Trump, but he's playing into the political game here.
National concealed carry reciprocity. You want protection. Just like your driver's license or your marriage license, your Second Amendment must apply across state lines. It will. We'll get it done pretty quickly, too. The Biden gun control agenda is part and parcel of the left-wing crusade to weaponize government against law-abiding citizens while letting criminals roam free. They're all over the place. Never seen anything like it. You're afraid to walk through one of these Democrat cities. You go out for a loaf of bread.
So, of course, he's calling it, they don't even call it Democratic Party, or call it the Democrat. The Democrat. The Democrat. So it stinks, folks. Hi, Bella. Let me get a few comments, and I'm going to go back to some of the other things about Daniel Perry that we need to know. Methinks the open carry laws mean they look to rule the streets. We're in charge. Dems will move out. They win elections, then look at Florida. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Gary. I think they want to frustrate us and get us the hell out of their states. And this is one of the ways. To intimidate. To have the Kyle Rittenhouses out there. So you can't even protest. You can't even protest. All right. All right, so there are a few other things I want to show you. Okay, by the way, the prosecutor, I believe, released some of this information about Perry. 76-page filing dated March 27th was unsealed Thursday and revealed Perry's social media footprint and private messages. Perry had searched on his phone for information on protests going on in Texas and Seattle several times. So he's actively looking for this thing. And I'm sure that what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse is making a lot of these lunatics, these gun nuts, feel emboldened to do things like this. Because they can get away with murder, literally. Some searches included the keywords protests tonight, protesters in Seattle get shot, and riot shootouts. A review of the information extracted from his cell phone also revealed several racist memes. One was a white box with the text, "It's okay to be white." Another used the N-word. Another meme found on his phone with the text, "My employer," with a photo of the building on the sign on it, which said "White Power, White Country Power, and Light Company." He also sent several messages about guns and killing others. He also shared a meme on Facebook that showed a girl sitting in her dad's lap with a book. The girl in the meme was depicted saying, "Daddy, why did you play video games?" And Dad said, "Because slaughtering people in real life has so many complications." After George Floyd's death and amid the background of heightened national tension and protest, Perry posted and spoke more frequently, denouncing protesters and expressing a desire to attack looters, and complained multiple times that looters had destroyed his barbershop. He says on May 29th, 2020, he posted, "I might go to Dallas to shoot looters." On May 30th, he posted on Facebook, "It's getting bad. Black people are even attacking cops right outside the base gates. This is Texas. I wonder why no looters have been shot yet." On May 31st, he told a person on Facebook, "I might have to kill a few people on my way to work. They are rioting outside my apartment complex." Perry told that person, "No protesters go near me or my car." It says, and the friend replied, "Can you catch me a Negro, Daddy?" And he replied, "This is what I am hoping." Perry shared a Facebook status that said, this was on June 1st, "It's official that I'm a racist because I do not agree with people acting like animals at the zoo. I was on the side of the protesters until they started with looting and violence. On multiple occasions in 2020, he compared Black Lives Matter movement to zoo full of monkeys flinging their shit." On June 1st, he shared a Facebook YouTube link with the title, "Protesters, Looters Get Shot, San Antonio, Texas." He posted this with the text, "Glad somebody finally did something." All right. Now, this was Perry claiming that Foster, this was the guy who was killed, pointed a weapon at him. Now, I don't know the facts, if that is actually true or not. Prosecutors argued that Perry deliberately drove into the crowd of peaceful protesters and provoked the confrontation with Foster. So in other words, this was a provoked act. Now, you can decide for yourself, but remember, there was a jury and he was convicted. Again, he's not been sentenced yet. But even before the sentencing, Abbott, and remember, this is the same guy when we had the Uvalde killings, who came out praising the heroism of the officers, that they ran right into the danger, which they didn't. And he got caught in a lie. And he knew he got caught in a lie. And he did what other liars would do. He said, "Well, it wasn't my fault." And to this day, he hasn't made any more speeches about Uvalde. Because anything he says will get himself in trouble. So this sickens me. And tangentially, if you look at this situation with the 21-year-old, I believe his name is Teixeira, who had posted classified documents on Discord. He was one of these guys who loves guns. Everybody seems to love guns on that side. And now even Marjorie Taylor Greene is defending this guy who put people at risk, not realizing this shit where he wants to look so bold and so heroic by posting this information. You know, it costs people lives. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Okay, I'm going to show you one more. And this, again, comes out of WFAA, I believe, in Texas. I'm not sure, but we're going to watch it.
Igniting a debate online with the controversial pardon plan just hours after a murder conviction.
Well, the governor says he will pardon Sergeant Daniel Perry as soon as the paperwork hits his desk. He was found guilty Friday for the shooting death of Garrett Foster of Plano during a Black Lives Matter protest in Austin in 2020. Now, Chris Sadeghi is with us this morning.
Yeah, Chris Perry hasn't even been sentenced just yet, Chris.
That's right, Shara. The whole process is not even played out, but the Texas governor cannot grant a pardon in a criminal court case. Still, Governor Greg Abbott's pressure to overturn this jury verdict is stepping out of bounds, according to critics. The governor tweeted.
Now, again, what he said, as far as I know, is true. He can't. But what he can do is he can recommend that the pardon board give him a parole. And remember, it is Abbott. It is he who appointed, I think, 7 of the members, if not all of them. Let me see if I might even have that information. I might have. Yeah, okay, let me just quickly show you that. It says here, board members are appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate. Currently, there are 7 members, all of whom were either appointed or reappointed to the board during Abbott's time. So, obviously, at least in my mind, he's going to have an expectation that they're going to come through for him, just in the same way that Trump is going to have the expectation that Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Barrett will come through for him if he loses any of those cases, whether it's Georgia or in New York. It won't matter because you know what's going to happen. The appeals are just going to keep going up. And then we're going to see where the rubber hits the road. And this is where I get very pessimistic. And this is where I'm going to relate it to what Veg was talking about with scams. The worst scam that's out there would be this gerrymandering and the usurping of illegally or legally, but through shenanigans, chicanery, that they're going to, just steal the truth. And they're going to make it their truth. And they're going to get away with it. They're going to scam their way like Trump. Everybody's scamming. Everybody wants to be like Trump. And that's what they feel is the prescription for dealing with people like you and me. Because we are the ones who are screwing things up. We're the liberals who are screwing things up. We're the ones that are the cause of high crime, high inflation, and we're just spreading nonsense about climate change. So it's a very nasty situation, ladies and gentlemen, because again, we have to be put through this labyrinth of tests to be able to make people pay for the things they've done wrong. You've got to have some type of justice in this. And they're stealing it. Hence, we become, or are becoming, Russia. And I think that the problem is this, again, it's the lack of willing to do anything. This is where I said last week, you have to be positive. And part of that is actively doing something. You have to act. And we can't wait for somebody else to do something. Because I think there's this idea that somehow things are going to be snapped up and it's going to be figured out. At the last second. 2 outs in the ninth and we're going to win this thing. But we're not. Because it's so easy for them to just put sugar in the gas tank. Got the governors in these southern states beating us down. You've got the Supreme Court. You've got the appellate courts. Some of them are helping out these lunatics. And real people are suffering. And I know just the very fact that Alito said that he would put a stay on what was going on. I mean, when it gets to the Supreme Court, again, that's where the rubber meets the road. Bad things are going to happen. And I'm not suggesting, and you've known this from me, I'm not suggesting violence. I mean, I know I said that, if you have a gun, you better be prepared to use it. And this is another case where, the guy didn't use the gun. I'm not saying he should. But bad things happen when Republicans have guns because they'll use them. And they'll use them when they have the advantage. Which is why I don't trust this guy. Because he has a clear indicator from his past on social media that he's racist, and he's going to be willing to take steps to become violent. And just because he says that the guy pointed the gun at him doesn't mean that he pointed the gun at him. Again, I don't know what the hell the guy had the AK-47 for. I'm no fan of that. But who knows what actually happened. But we do know this, is that he was convicted. And it's pretty hard to convict people in Texas, of firearm violations, like that, murder, when it comes to this type of situation. So, bottom line is we got to keep going with this thing. Got to fight it. And again, the number one way we can do something is to vote. And Ved, you did allude to this, maybe a little bit different than I would have, but you mentioned that, there's definitely a difference between the two parties. And there's a lot of scamming going on. Politically, just the very fact people become winners in their elections, they have usually doing something corrupt. But there's different levels of corruption. And there's some lines that some people won't pass. But what we have in the Republican Party, we have a fascist regime. I'll say that again. We have a fascist regime. And this is 2023 in this country. And the reason we have a fascist regime is they saw the change. And again, to them, the change was Obama being elected president. They saw the numbers. And because they're racist, the fuse was lit. Got no time. And this is our guy to do it. He'll do anything. And he's got Clarence Thomas to help him out. So, it's very depressing. It's very depressing. But it just shows all the more why we have to vote. You have to vote. And not that that's going to alleviate everything. But you can't be idle, folks. You can't. And, it would have been nice if Bernie had won, which I still don't think he would have. I would have voted for him. But being a pragmatist, Biden came along at the right time. But they're making him look like something to the left of Bernie Sanders. So we have a big challenge ahead of us, everybody. Because this is just the beginning, and you heard it here tonight, but this is just the beginning when you see something like this with Abbott, Greg Abbott. And if he does get that parole board, to give put him on parole pardon, essentially, and this thing's just going to keep going on. So anytime you have a protest, the Daniel Perrys of the world are going to come out and they're going to put a hole through you. And if they're in the right state, they're going to get away with it. And they'll be considered a conquering hero by some of the most racist congressional members in Washington. That would be, of course, Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor. All of them, as far as I'm concerned. Let's go to some of the commentary here. We're going to go from newest to oldest here. Franz, good to see you, Franz. It's even worse if Uncle Clarence gets away with nothing, then the whole judicial system can be on the take. Right. This is what's driving Ronnie nuts, my wife. Just, how this guy gets away with crap like this. And forget about John Roberts, the Chief Justice. He is useless. He knows that historically he's going to look like the leader of the lost. but he's so afraid of the other side, and probably winking at them anyway, that he'll let them get away with it. Hi Brian, I miss hanging out here. Hey, is T-Bone affected in the flood flooding? I sure hope not, with him taking care of his mom. Yeah, I know Veg just mentioned that he was taking care of his mom in hospice, and that's a lot of work, because I know what that's like. I did that for almost 2 years. I took care of my mother for 7 years, but in hospice for almost 2 years. And it is draining, absolutely draining. Republican Party is a cult. It certainly is a cult. In the same way that the Nazi Party is a cult. It's frightening, and this is again why this entire channel was created. And by the way, if you're new to this channel on YouTube, this group was created on Facebook 3 years ago, over 3 years ago, I suppose. It's called Divided We Stand on Facebook, and we ask that you join. We're not monetized. We're not asking for anything. The last thing we want to do. Zero. All we're asking is the participation, the commiseration. And of course, we have this channel. So if you're not subscribed yet, consider it. If you like the video, please give a like, a thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. I can take it. Okay, I'm not paid in this, folks. Who else we have here? Bella, Franz. All right. I think that them banning an FDA-approved medicine might be the trigger that sets up a massive process if this goes along with it. Right. I agree with you, Veg, on that. And then there's the reaction of what the Republicans will do, which will happen. They're going to try to limit the vote. If there are, obviously not even massive protests, but massive voting. I mean, that's the best way. I mean, protests are important, but in terms of change, it doesn't happen until you vote. Again, the protests are fine. I've been part of them. The Jeff Van Drew protests. But in the end, it's going to have to be the power, and the power is through voting. And it may have to be that we're just going to have to win, the major ones, the Senate, the gubernatorials, because the way it's gerrymandered, it'd be really, really tough to take the Congress. It's all cheating. It's a scam. It's Veg, you were talking obviously about just the scamming going on in business, capitalism, and there is a lot of that. It's just nonstop on my phone, and but the scamming in terms of politics, just right there, gerrymandering is right up top. They steal your power. Yeah, when they saw they soon couldn't win on the national level. I know exactly what you're saying. Gerrymandering rots. We never hear from Bush Jr. Karl Rove, chief responsible for drawing up a gerrymandering plan to back them. 100%. The political discourse has been toxic since the orange turds slithered down the golden staircase. Yeah, I think generally that's true, Veg. I do still keep bringing up 1993, when Newt Gingrich kind of knew what was going to happen. I mean, they weren't stupid. They understood the demographics of this country and what was going to happen. And they decided that instead of negotiating with the other party, that they simply were going to say, no, we don't give in on anything. And they didn't. So anytime the Democrats were going to push something through, they had to do it through majority of Democrats voting it in. There's no negotiating with them. We're in that serious of a situation. So you're all right. Bella, my progressive district was redrawn to the southern border of Virginia, the heart of the KKK land. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. Just keep winding the districts around, like in Ohio. I think it's the 5th district. I'm not sure about the numbers there, but that would be Jim Jordan. It just wraps around Columbus. Now we know Columbus is generally African American, so what do? They don't make a nice square as it should be. They went around Columbus. I might go to Ukraine to shoot the bad guys. So he's prejudiced, free country. His type is hated by the left, same as has always been. Military weapons, guns, hands of common Joe on a street. A difference. Yeah. Common Joe's dangerous. Since when is running people over Famy Valley? 2017, right? I guess since Charleston, just run them over. This is revolting. America is a scary place. Ditto abortion. Dems are leaving such states and will continue to if the Supreme Court's rule. I guess it's kind of what happens in Russia, when all the young males were taking off to Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Turkey. They couldn't fight it inside the system, so they walked. About 500,000 of them, in fact, which put a lot of pressure on Putin. So I don't know whether that's good or not. For people, liberals to leave these states and go back to the other states. I don't know. You're gonna have to have a mind much smarter than mine to figure that out. I don't know. I'm just very depressed over this. Methinks the open carry law. I think I posted this before, but I'm going to read this again. Methinks the open carry laws mean they look to rule the streets. Right. That's it. They want to rule the streets and intimidate, because they know generally we're not the ones who purchase guns. We use the pen in this. Generation Z is looking strong for democracy. We're going to need them. We need to add members to the SCOTUS, right? And how are we going to do that, though, Lisa? It's just... You're right. I mean, it has to be done. That's the only way around this. But it's just not something we can click up. Of course, you know that. It's just... Somebody's going to have to be very creative. I don't know how you're going to do it. Cancer, dad, dementia. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more difficult, more trying than being a caretaker of somebody who has dementia. You just cannot know every minute you're watching to make sure they get their medication, that they don't turn the burner on and burn the house down. And then the commentary gets intense. Paranoia. It's not easy playing God, you know what I mean? I'm an atheist, but you understand what I'm saying. I don't like playing God. Feinstein needs to resign. She certainly does. It's kind of, that's why I was kind of mad with Supreme Court. Ruth Ginsburg. She should have given up earlier. I mean, I know she wanted to do her job and she was fighting to the end, but her health was such that it would have been better if she just would have gotten the hell out, get a young person in there. It ended up hurting us. Yeah. The only effective democracy has proportional representation.
Just a person.
Yeah, well.
Who are you?
We don't really have that, do we? Look at what, North Carolina. I mean, you have almost 50% Democrats there. And who's representing them in the supermajority? The Republicans. Mark Elias is suing Ohio and other heavily gerrymandered areas. He always wins. Let's hope he wins. Because the Republicans have been doing the winning. Yeah, get rid of Jim Jordan. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? I'm afraid he's going to be around long after I'm gone. I lost both my parents in 2022. Yeah, it's brutal. He was both in 1 year. Yeah, I mean, I accepted my parents' death. It's interesting. Like when my father died, and I was taking care of my mother, I was taking care of my father, and I remember the morning I got a call that he died. I couldn't even have the typical remorse that a son would have, because I had immediately jump into action, go to the funeral home and take care of all the different things. And that's the difficulty when dealing with, it's not death, it's dealing with dying, and then again having to play God. It wears you down because you have to make big decisions for people, and it's all based on the fact that you don't want them to suffer. But you have to give up your time, and it's difficult. It's extremely difficult, and it was. My wife and I just struggle, and to this day, we take care of my mother-in-law right now, and you have to watch. It was almost relief when my parents died because I could breathe. I didn't have to show up. I didn't want them to die. Don't get me wrong. I loved my parents. They loved me, but you can't pick and choose, the way things go on your way out, especially when you're the caretaker. Very little, but it's brutal. It's brutal. It's weird, isn't it? Like I had this big family, mom and dad, and no one gets together anymore because we always went to mom and dad's. Yeah, life changes on a dime. And one day you're talking with somebody, and then less than 24 hours later, you're never going to see them again. Yeah. Yeah, she needs to step down. She just needs to step down to do the better thing. Unless she can prove that she can, think clearly, which isn't really happening. Zero credibility. I would be in 100% agreement. Took care of my mom for 10 years. It's rough. Yeah, it's... I think in terms of, again, physically and emotionally dealing with something, that for me was the toughest. Although I would say the death of my pet, emotionally, I think was even worse. The relationship that I had with the dog, I was trying to protect it, care for it. It's all bad. What can I tell you? In each case, you're playing God. Yeah, and we're all, and Dave and I have discussed this before. We are generally in the age group where the parents either have just recently died or will be dying, because it's just the fact that people get in their 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and then that's it. So we're having a lot of these stories, and then we start sharing, commiserating about this, because 50% of the elderly end up having dementia if they, get to their 80s or their 90s, and then that story is repeated itself with us. Yeah, I would agree, Lisa. For me, it was crushing, because to me, with an adult, you can rationalize and talk about the impending death, and the person who is dying can understand it. But the pet, they're so noble and so innocent. You just know that it's not fair, as nothing really is anyway. If I had been a religious person, I would have been angry at God. The death of my pet. I did everything possible to save that animal, and it suffered. Yeah. Hey, Trucker John's in here. Good to see you, John. Joey's reminding me that I'm 63 now. I turned 63 a few days ago. Getting there, folks. I remember my father, about a year or two before he died. We were in a bathroom at a casino, and I wheelchaired him through the sink, and he's looking at the mirror there, and he looked at his face. He said, God, I'm looking at an old man. I can't believe myself. That's the first time my father ever kind of complained about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? He was very stoic about life and death, but it was interesting that he brought that up when he looked at it in his face, as if it was looking as a third person. And though what we physically see is a good indicator that we're getting older, the age does generally tell us, the changes and things that we're facing. The inevitable. But as with anything, it is a number, and it does matter. But what really, really matters is, the way we think. Can we think like a young person? And I'd like to think that people like you and I have maybe that in us, that we're defying the age by having some type of virtue and some type of wisdom, that's built up over the years, rather than just the brain decaying like the rest of the body. And I think that was the one thing about my father. One of the last things he said to me the night before he died, he said, and he was alluding to my mother in a certain sense. He said, I'm glad that I didn't lose my mind. I mean, he knew he was going to die within a few months, and the doctor told him that, and he accepted it. He could have had an operation, but he didn't want it. He wanted out. He wasn't going to live that way. But he said, I'm glad I didn't lose my mind. Even though he, as I told you, he looked at his face and said, my God, where'd all the years go? And now I look at myself and say, I get it. At the time, I didn't think too much of that. You know what I mean? It was just an idle comment by my father. But then, as I've aged after his death, I'm getting closer and closer to his age, and we become more alike in a certain sense. Or at least I'm understanding the position that he was in. And I assume that you all know the position that your parents were in. Because you, like me, you and I will move to the front of the line. And there you go. And that's what's happened. Dad was a navigator on B-17s at 18. He flew 35 missions and was shot down twice, and was the navigator on the chase plane for the flying bomb, which killed Joe Kennedy Jr. Operation Aphrodite. Wow, though, that's something. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, we have a history here, folks, with, our parents. And like I say, most of us, have experienced the death of at least one of our parents. Joey, I know you have. And like I say, we moved to the front of the line. It's the way it is. But you know what? We have to go out fighting. We have to do that, and that's the point I have today. This is just horrible news to see what's coming out of Texas. Expect more of this. Horrible news with this kid that was just posting all kinds of shit, not understanding the ramifications of his acts, and people defending his actions. But that being said, there is a duty. We can't turn ourselves away from this. A big hiker, I would get my peace meditation. My knees are slowly slowing me way down. Yeah, I think in general, walking, Lisa, is a way to, release that stress. I mean, low-level stress, over time is it attacks the body and causes all kinds of problems. I don't have to tell anybody that. But walking is, I think, a good way of releasing it. I personally wouldn't run anymore. I wouldn't want to damage my hips or my knees any more than walking. But I think that walking is a wonderful thing. Just breathe and, if anything, you look at a squirrel, look at a tree, just distract yourself and contemplate things, Big respect at the great. Yeah, I mean, they were the greatest generation, My father, went to West Philly High School, and quite a few of his friends died in the war. One of his friends died less than 2 weeks before the end of the war. A German sniper got him. He was in the trees. I think it was in Belgium. Horrible. And my father said that, during his life, he had dreams of these people. And the interesting thing about his dreams was these young people who lost their lives in the war during World War II. They appeared young in the dreams. And it made him have such empathy for his friends because he missed them. But, these people had dreams. They wanted to be artists or architects or doctors or whatever. And they had their lives taken. Many at the age of 18, 19, and 20. And even those who, like my father, did survive. And it was hell for my father. I don't want to get into that crap, but it was hell. But he told me it was like the worst 4.5 years of his life. And he enlisted. The worst 4.5 years of his life. But you did what you had to do. So yeah, it was a great generation. The music was new then, and it was beautiful. Things looked pretty good for a while until that lunatic, that fascist, took over. Brian, there are phytochemicals that trees put out, Japanese tree bathing. I would imagine so. I don't know much about that, at least myself. I just know that one of the things I like doing is walking. I do use the treadmill too, but my weight loss, my general outlook on things has been much more positive since I've walked. I do go from thought to thought, but even the simple act of, excuse me, of a deep breath is very helpful. That point where you breathe in and then this is like the second where just like breathing in and breathing out and then breathe out. It's just relaxing. Franz, let's keep the spirit of that older generation. Never would have put up with the bullshit going on now. Yeah. But even some of them weren't that cool. Yeah, we just don't hear as much about it, but there were some assholes back then. Well, I think on that note, I'd like to finish up by saying, I think that it is important that, first of all, that we commiserate on this, that we speak out. You have to get it out. So I enjoyed watching, Veggie's video today on scamming because, that's all. I'm sick of it. I'm just this bullshit I get in my emails. Your bill is overdue, or you were charged for this. Contact. What is this crap? I'm not saying every company's like that now, but there's so much of this scamming going on. It's basically cheating. People don't want to do it the normal route, the honesty. And there's a lack of honesty out there. That's what I think Veg is saying. And he's had it because Veg is an honest person. And we're generally honest people. There's nothing in it for us here. I'm not looking for anything. Yeah. A lot of dishonesty. I love spring, my favorite season. Well, it certainly is beautiful. And I do like the change. I used to like summer until it got too hot. Spring lasts for about a month these days, and you go right into hell. Yeah. I don't know. Well, anyway, folks, it's 10:13. I made an hour and such, and I'm really happy that everybody showed up. Now, next week, again, we hope to have Dave. Again, I can't guarantee it, but he did say he's looking forward to perhaps doing a show next week. Can't guarantee it because Dave, he went through a serious operation, serious things going on. But that would be something to show up for. Let's look at a couple comments and we're going to finish up here. Gary, guy was convicted. Abbott wasn't Abbott an asshole. Yeah, that's it. That's it right there. The guy was convicted and Abbott is an asshole. Agree and agree. Big love to Dave, yeah. Dave has been 10 months, and he's even said it, 10 months. 10 months of hell. He's had these things before, but this was about as bad as it gets. And then, of course, the heart. But the good thing is that after he woke up from the surgery, he felt better. So if there's anything good about having triple bypass, this is it. So let's take care of ourselves if we can. Take your walk. Avoid sugars. It's bad enough these Republicans stress us out, but we've got to take care of ourselves. And if it means going for a walk, that's what we'll have to do. Veg, we've waited for Dave a long time. We can't wait until he's healed. Yeah, we can wait until he's healed, right? Okay, we did. It's been 10 months. We have waited. So, but I think Dave wants to come on. And Dave called me 3 days in a row, and each day was about an hour on the phone. And it was Dave. I mean, it was just Dave and his humor. And when he has his humor, like when he said, just tell everybody that I'll come on, but the stipulation is $1.7 million, then that's Dave. That's Dave. I didn't hear that at all for those 10 minutes. Next week. Thanks, guys. It was nice seeing everybody's words. Take care. Well, it is good seeing everybody, and thank you for showing up in this intimate commiseration. At the very least, you and I were not alone. And as Veg says, there are decent people out there, you know. And that's going to have to be enough for us. That's just going to have to be enough. Well, have yourself a nice walk, folks, this week. And enjoy yourselves if you can. And if you can't, go for a walk anyway. I did something very good for my health last night. Saw John Anderson play Yes Classics for 3 hours. Yeah. Wow, he's 78. Yeah. I love Yes. I just, you know, and John Anderson was a fantastic vocalist. He's just, I think his voice for me was a little too high. So I couldn't listen to Rush very much after a while. High pitched voice. I liked like Greg Lake, John Wetton singing. But yeah, but still, Anderson, I won't make any complaints. Just too high pitched for me. But it was great group. You're welcome, Lisa. It's good seeing everybody. Good seeing everybody. And if you haven't checked Veg's video out, do it. Okay. You're welcome, Bella. It's good to talk to you, and very interesting stories. So, all right, folks, I am going to sign off. And I'm going to get a drink of water. And then tomorrow I'm going to go for a walk. So, until next time, if there is a next time, which I assume there will be, maybe we'll see Dave, maybe not.